Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laron, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaron.com. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to episode 48, and in this episode I am going to talk about how I finished book number 42. So you guys know that those of you who've been listening along and following me for the past, 2 months or so, I have been working on a book in public, and I'm pleased to announce that the name of that book is Shadow Deal, The Good Necromancer Book 1. So this is the book that I've been writing in public, the book that I have been talking about in the course for writers that I'm talking about, and the book that I am going to be publishing next under my brand new pen name, M.L. McKnight, which will be exclusively dedicated toward urban fantasy. And so I just finished it, I think it was a day or so ago, and I'm really happy with where it landed. I'm in the process of going back through the novel as we speak and just cleaning up anything that maybe isn't consistent and getting it ready so that it can be shipped off to my editor this weekend. So this weekend it will be in my editor's hand, and in about 2 to 3 weeks after that it should be back to me, and then another day or two after that, it's going to go to another editor, and then it's going to come back to me. Then it's going to go to a final proofreader. So it now begins the whole process of working with a team of people that will help me make the book as polished as it can be. So I'm excited to talk about that and to unveil the cover here next month. So just stay tuned for all that good stuff. But I also wanted to thank all of you who listened to the episode last week where I was talking about writing in a polar vortex. And I was talking about the format of the show, and I invited all of you to share your feedback with me and what you liked, if you liked the scripted stuff, if you liked more of me just turning on the microphone and talking about what's on my mind, kind of like I'm doing now. And thank you for those of you who wrote me privately and gave me some feedback. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue trying to do the impromptu, just turn on the microphone. And I've got some talking points that I'm looking at right now, so I'm not doing this completely ad-lib, but I am trying to be more real and more professional and all that. And one of my subscribers was really on point, and he said, I don't care about the professionalism, and I don't care about the quality of the show. What I care about is the content, right? And the content is king. And so that has always been my number one focus, is the content. But how can I make that better, right? How can I make that content better? And so I'm going to experiment with this for a little while and see how this goes. And I did promise that I am going to bring Oswald back at some point. He will come back. But thank you for those of you who gave me that feedback. That was something that was very, very helpful to me. So back to my book. So this is book number 42, although I think it could be book 43. I don't remember how many books I've written anymore, and that's kind of crazy. So, but yeah, what's on my mind this week is, I succeeded in doing something that was pretty gutsy, if you think about it, and that was writing a novel in public and telling everyone that I was going to do it. If you think about it, I mean, that's pretty difficult in some respects, because what happens if you say that and then you don't write the novel or you don't finish it, right? So there was definitely some pressure on me when I was writing this, and I can't sit here and tell you guys that I didn't feel that pressure. I really did, but I will say that ironically, I didn't really have a whole lot of writer's block. For those of you who have read my writer's books, you know that I don't believe in writer's block in the sense of the term, but there was never a period in this novel where I got stuck. And that was kind of interesting, because in most of my novels, there's at least one or two patches where, things are really rough and it's kind of tough to figure out what's next. That didn't really happen this time around. And I wonder if that's because tons of people were following me and watching me and watching my every move. I don't know, but I was pretty happy with the fact that I was able to write this novel pretty quickly and with relatively minimal interruption and hassle. There was a week or so where I was unable to write anything, but that was because I was working on some stuff related to the course, and it was actually my urban fantasy book database. It was the week that launched. I wasn't able to write anything, but I don't chalk that up as a loss. I chalk that up as a win, because long term that's going to really do some really great things for readers and ultimately for me. So yeah, I succeeded in writing a book in public. So I can't promise that I'll write my next book in public, but I think the reason this went okay is because I didn't put any deadlines on it. Like, I just said kind of vaguely that maybe I'll be done at the end of January. That didn't happen. It was more like the first couple of days in February, but I'm really happy that succeeded. And so another thing I wanted to talk about was how this book that I wrote, The Good Necromancer, is an exercise in writing what I know. And there's a writing mantra, and it's write what you know. And there are people that fall on different sides of this mantra, but how I've always thought about it is, I'm not like, I do want to write what I know, but I've always viewed books as ways to expand my mind. And I've always found that reading books by perspectives, or reading books from perspectives of people that see the world differently than I do, that makes me a better person. It enhances the way that I think about the world. It enhances the relationships that I have with others. And so my approach as a writer in writing has always been to not write what I know. It's always been to try to write and learn something different that stretches me and makes me more compassionate, and it makes me more knowledgeable about things that are going on in the world. And so one of my very first books, Reconciled People, it was a short story collection. I wrote, I think it was 10 short stories from the perspectives of people that were from walks of life that I didn't know about. And I just wanted to try to write that, to try to understand. And so that is, if you look at my first 40 or so books, that's the theme of what I'm doing. I'm writing things that I don't necessarily know about, but I want to learn about. And I can't always tell you that I've gotten it right, but I can tell you that it has been pretty satisfying for me as a writer, and it has helped keep me excited and engaged in the writing process. And this book, it is probably one of the first times in my writing career where I didn't do that, where I actually did sit down and I wrote what I knew. And there were quite a few things that I knew about this, and I wanted to talk about that. So the first thing I knew, this main character was going to be African American. And so I've always enjoyed writing black protagonists because it's what I know, and it's my people, it's my culture, and so I've really enjoyed that, and so I really had a great time creating a character that I hope that readers are going to like in Lester Broussard, who is the main character of the Good Necromancer series, and also I've written a book or a series of books that has a necromancer in it. So my series Modern Necromancy with Justin Sloan is probably one of my better performing series of all time. I mean, it's got the most reviews of any books that I've written. Book one, Deathmarked, has I think over 120 reviews on Amazon, which is really cool. And so readers really liked the necromancy and the magic system that Justin and I created in that series. And so I was like, okay, this is one of my more familiar and successful series, so why don't I take bits and pieces of that magic system that readers really liked and then incorporate that into something different in this series. And so this isn't my first time at the rodeo writing a necromancer, and so I'm writing what I know in a way, right? And so the last part about writing what I know with this series is that it takes place in St. Louis. And so I have not had any series that's taken place in anywhere where I've lived before. And so this was kind of different for me. I was born and raised in St. Louis, and St. Louis has a special place in my heart. I have many family members that still live there, and I travel there regularly, and I thought it would be cool to set a novel in some places where I used to be when I was there and when I was a kid. And so there are places that make appearances where, they have some meaning in my life. And I thought hopefully make for a more compelling story and character and all that. And so the Good Necromancer series, it doesn't take place in touristy parts of St. Louis. Well, I take that back. It does open up under the St. Louis Arch, but under the Gateway Arch. But that's really the only touristy place-ish that appears in the book, other than there's a farmer's market in St. Louis. It's called Soulard. It's world-renowned, one of the best farmers markets in the country, and my great-grandmother took me there all the time when I was a kid, and so I thought that was kind of cool to write that into the story. It has a purpose for being in the story, but other than that, it takes place in off-the-beaten-path places in St. Louis that, I hope will bring some flavor to the city and help people really understand how St. Louis is different compared to, say, Chicago, right? And so that was a lesson in writing what I knew, and I don't know, it'll be an interesting experiment to see how people resonate with it. It'll be interesting if people resonate with this more than anything else I've ever done, or if it'll be about the same. And my hope is that this series will do better than my prior series, and if it does do the same, I think you probably can make the argument that it doesn't really matter whether you write what you know or whether you write what you don't know. I think it just matters on the style of the writer and the quality of the writing. And so, am I a perfect writer? No, but I think I've come a long way compared to now, compared to book number 1, when I was publishing first in 2014. And so I'm curious to hear what everyone thinks about it, but I will be sharing more about the Good Necromancer series here in the coming weeks. Thanks for joining me this week. If you like this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaellaron.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaellaron.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and you want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.